Hey everyone, welcome to the Healthcare Digital Marketing Podcast. I'm Lamar with MedRank Interactive. This is Chris with KickStart Dental Marketing. Pretty excited about this episode. It's funny because we're both in the dental marketing space, but it's always great to collaborate with experts and coaches and overall people with just a lot of experience and who love what they do, especially working in the dental space. So Chris, before we really get into the meat of this conversation, please open up and just kind of give some insights to your background.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Lamar. So I've been in advertising and marketing for probably too long than I want to admit. But back in the day, I actually used to work for AOL, for anybody that's old enough to remember them. So that's kind of how I got my start. And, I learned a lot about, what's great about marketing and advertising. And unfortunately, I learned quite a bit about what's not so great about it. And what that really motivated me to start my own agency. And so back in the day when I first started on my own, it was about 12 years ago, I kind of started an agency that, took all kinds of different industries, auto mechanics, lawyers, but always local marketing. That's always really what's kind of gotten me. And, that was great. But what we found after a while is that, every time you take on a new industry that you don't really know about, you've got to learn it a little bit it's almost kind of your responsibility as a marketer to learn it so you can do your best for your clients. Right. And so when we would have to learn a new industry, sometimes it would just take us too long. And, it would just didn't feel right. And we lost some clients because of it. And we're like, all right, let's figure this out. Let's be an expert in something. Right. And so at the time we had, a few dental clients on board and they were doing really well and they paid their bills, which is always good in this world. And we like, all right, let's go for it. Let's do it. And, that was 6-7 years ago, I think. And we haven't really looked back. So that's really how we got started and where we are today.
Wow, that's awesome. And so I love that story because for me, because we're in the dental space as well. So it's almost like the dental space called us, which I'm sure you can relate to, where you just saw, the opportunity and you saw the work that you were doing for your current dental clients. And then the opportunity to repeat that system, no matter where the dentist is located. And so that's a really good feeling to be able to determine that pretty early on. Because a lot of companies, right, they'll do general marketing for many years and never pivot or switch. But I think to your point, to be really good at marketing, you have to be able to, understand the trends and know what's happening in that space. And being on top of it is pretty vital and important so that you can speak their language. But I guess let's say there's a marketer listening to this, right? How hard was it for you to take the kind of leap of faith to start your own business? Was that like a hard process?
It was really hard. I was like, why in the hell would I take my potential of clients to several million down to, whatever it is? I mean, there's a lot of dentists, don't get me wrong, but still it took me a while. And actually it took me a good year plus to convince myself that we should do this because, it was risky, right? You don't want to make a bad decision that early on in a business because sometimes you don't recover from that, right? And so what happened was I joined a mentor group. And so I'm part of this group. It's called, 7-Figure Agency, and it's run by Josh Nelson. It's grown. And I was like one of the first 10 or probably 15 members. So that was a long time ago. And he ran an agency for HVAC people, right? So he's like, this is the way you should do it. This is what we did. And here's how to do it. And it just, took me some time of listening to this, seeing his success and some others in our group's success when they niched out. And I was finally like, you know what, I'm convinced, let's do it. I mean, it's not like we fired all of our clients from our general agency, but all the new clients we took on was, all in the dental niche. And so, to this day, I'm a member of that group and it's still the same consistent messaging. And, that was probably what pushed me into it.
Wow, that's awesome. And it's funny you say that, and I can relate so much. I've met Josh, amazing.
Oh, you know him?
Yeah. So I went down to,
cool.
Gosh, I went down to Florida, probably this was pre or before the pandemic.
Yeah.
Got
we meet down there every quarter now.
Oh, really?
Down in Miami, yeah.
That is awesome. Such a world, but now it makes sense because it's like if you can niche down, right, and you could
Yeah,
provide great service and produce what the client needs at the level they need it versus trying to have to figure it out. It brings more value to them, but also it brings a ton of value to you guys as well. Um,
absolutely.
so let's talk about, just overall, from a marketing standpoint, when you think about the clients you work with, if you're designing a website, right, how do you make sure that that website is created to convert new patients?
Yeah. So how we do it here is we've got kind of a checklist, right? And it's, we meet, quarterly on kind of our processes and procedures and what's working, what's not, just our team internally. And we go over this checklist. And we're like, all right, when we take over an existing site or we're going to build the client a new one, what are some of the top things that we know that are working now for dentists in terms of getting more people to raise their hand and say, yeah, I want more information about you, or I want to go ahead and schedule an appointment, right? And so we use a checklist of probably 20 different things.
Okay.
Every time we take on a new client. And it's things like, basic things that, everybody should think of, but they don't, right? Like your phone number is prominent on every page, right? Your address, especially in dentistry, location is a big deal. So you want your address on every page of the website. You want a strong call to action on what we call above the fold of a website, right? On the very top. So before you have to scroll down anywhere, you need to have a strong call of action, in my opinion, to get people to want to raise that hand, right? So it's things like that. And we go through each one and make sure that all of the websites that we either inherit or that we build have those factors. But it's definitely a top priority because, like I tell clients, the website can really be the hub of all of your marketing activity.
Oh, yeah.
Forget SEO, paid ads, of course, it's part of that. But if you go out and do direct mail, if you go buy a billboard, if heaven forbid you go out and buy a yellow page ad, right? People are still going to funnel into your website because it's so easy for them to go and check out. So we make sure that they know that it's an important part and one of the first steps in becoming a client of ours.
Yeah, that's awesome. How much do you guys, I guess, depend on like heat maps to like look at overall?
Yeah, Lamar, that's awesome. I'm glad you brought it up. We used to do it. We used Crazy Egg. Is that right? Is that the name of one of those? Yeah. And it was a little expensive to scale for us. And it's been a couple of years probably since we've done that, but it came up in one of our meetings not too long ago about, hey, this may be something cool to be able to show clients, where, people are going, and not only to show clients, but wouldn't that help us, as an agency understand where people are going on somebody's website?
Yeah.
And, it's a good visual, and, you can get some of that from Google Analytics and things like that. But I think the heat maps are a great idea. Do you guys use those?
Yeah, very similar to your situation where it's like we've implemented on a few to understand, like, let's say if they're low on conversions, right, in terms of new patients, we want to understand what the patient's actually doing on, on the actual website. And heat maps are great for that. Crazy Egg's a big one that we've used as well. It just allows us to also look at if we change a button color, right? Like if we make that button blue for,
you can go back and compare
exactly
before,
better just because it was higher on the fold, like you mentioned. And then also, you're just clicking more because it's a different color. You really can't see that as well, if you don't have some kind of visualization behind it. But I was just curious if if that was kind of the approach with the conversion aspect of a website.
Yeah, I think we're going to come back with that at some point.
Gotcha. And so I know you guys do great dental marketing work with a lot of the dentists you work with. What are some of the ways that you really help them become visible online?
Well, we try to take each one. Kind of our sales pitch, if you will, is that we're not a big company. There's 13 of us here, so we're certainly big enough to get stuff done, but we're not that churn and burn, big company that has hundreds of clients, and we don't ever want to be that way. We're more of a boutique agency, and that allows us to focus on what we have in front of us versus what might be coming. And so because of that, we actually only take on a certain number of clients every year. We kind of create a budget early on. And we're like, all right, once we get to this is what we're staffed for. These are the projects that we can take on. So when we look at something like strategy, we try to customize it for each one that's coming in. Now, every market's different. Sometimes Facebook ads work great in one market, but you go to somewhere else and they don't, right?
Yep.
And it also depends on the dentist. Is it a specialty? Are they a general dentist? What do they want, implants? What is it that they're looking for?
Right.
So, we try to really customize the solution based on what they need, what their goals are. And it's kind of a potpourri, if you will. I haven't used that word in a few years, but it really is of strategies and figuring out what's going to be best for each client.
Wow, that's awesome. And I like that because I feel like if you have too many clients you work with, right? And some companies do it very well. I've worked in marketing agencies that they have a ton and they have the team and the staff and the systems and processes. But typically when there's too many, and I think it's the perspective of the agency too, right? If they treat that client as a number versus that custom solution for what that practice needs, because every practice is different. I think that is really what you have to consider when it's too many clients versus kind of the small boutique approach that like you guys and what we do. I think it's so imperative. So you can really like get very detailed with what you kind of the marketing strategy that you handle for these clients. And I think that's what when a small business owner is paying you for marketing, that's what they want, right? They just don't want to be a number that that's just
And what drives me nuts sometimes is that some of these big agencies, big media companies, the only way that they can scale for a lot of their services is by using automation.
Mm-hmm.
And we use some automation, no question about it, but not for the stuff that matters, like paid advertising, SEO, article building, things like that. And the only way you can truly scale that to hundreds or thousands with it making sense is automation. And, marketing with automation and the core services just isn't typically going to get you the results that, a smaller agency like yours and mine would be able to provide.
Right. No, I agree 100%. So what are all the services that you guys provide?
Yeah. So I was just actually going over that. We're kind of looking at changing some things up, but obviously things like website, we try to do branding and authority building for dentists. So, most small businesses don't have millions of dollars to pump into just branding, right? So we typically try to use Facebook ads as one of our branding tools. I think it works very well for getting your name out there, and it will bring in some new patients too.
Right.
We do SEO services, paid ads on like Google. We're testing and actually about ready to get into things like TikTok, Snapchat, stuff like that, because we're seeing that age demographic start to hockey stick like Facebook did back in the day, but much faster. We even do some training, online training for front desk staff. What we find is that most of the front desk staff that are answering the phones typically don't have a lot of training on how to talk to new patients, right? How to kind of sell the value of the practice. And so we put some really good, I'm biased, but some really good training in place online for those people. We do video reviews for patients. We do text reviews, like online reputation stuff. And then we track everything. And then there's social media. I mean, there's a lot of things that we do. We try to customize it based on, what the needs are.
Yeah, I think that, you hit the nail on the head with, thanks for sharing all your services, but I think you hit the nail on the head with, just helping them convert new patients, right? Because you can send as many to these doctors as you possibly can with their marketing budget and strategy, but if you're not converting them, then they're wasting marketing dollars, right?
Yeah.
I think what you're doing with helping them overcome that through training on how to speak to new patients based on service type, based on the need, based on the practice and demographics and all that good stuff. I think that's imperative. So good job on that, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a work in progress. I always try to make it better, but yeah, clients seem to like it, and it definitely does help. So
awesome. And so you did mention SEO. So I think a big part of that too, SEO, is reputation management, right? And so how important is online reviews for your the dentists that you work with?
This is going to sound weird, but unfortunately, I'm going to start it with, it's a big deal. And the reason I say unfortunately is because personally, I don't like the whole review landscape, right? I think that it's gotten better and there's less fake stuff out there. It does still exist. I think you and I are in an industry where we're a little sheltered by it because of, professionals, doctors, things like that. Right. But it is important. But I would always tell people, when you look at reviews, look at more than one source, check it out, call people. Don't make your decision just because of reviews, because even in I can't even imagine like locksmiths and things like that, how bad it can get. But I've even seen in dentistry where people have come to the dentist for the sole purpose of like getting prescription drugs because they're unfortunately addicted to those, and the dentist won't give it to them because of that. And they'll wind up giving them bad reviews online, and they'll do it all over. And there's just people out there that are vindictive and like that, and it can really affect a local business. So I think you and I are a little sheltered from it. I don't necessarily love it, but it is a big deal, and it's something you have to pay attention to as a dentist. Personally, what I think works better than just a regular text review, I do think those are important. I think video reviews from your patients speak volumes, because people buy from people. And, when you see a video, that's more human. You can relate more than just, letters on a screen. So we've gone the extra mile to try to develop some software to make that easy to leave video reviews for our clients. But unfortunately, it's a big deal. You can't ignore it. And it's something you need to stay on top of.
Yes, it's interesting that you say that, right? Because like, let's say if we rank a dentist in Google at the top, right? We finally get them there. You'll see them just start getting negative reviews. And we found when we did research, it was a competitor.
Yeah, even in dentistry, where these people are supposed to be ethical and professional, and
they had like a hidden alias, and they're like leaving reviews. Unfortunately, we were able to get them just removed, and we disputed them. But it's just it's crazy. It could be like the Wild Wild West sometimes.
Absolutely. Could you imagine like an industry like bail bonds or plumbers or something like that? I'm sure that's just running rampant.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I guess like when it comes to like reviews, how do you manage that for them, right? Like how do you look at, like, is it weekly, monthly? How do you make sure you're on top of their reviews to make sure they have good ones? If they're getting bad ones, you're kind of making them aware of it. Like how does that work?
Yeah, it's a great question. So our software integrates directly into their practice management software.
Okay.
And so when somebody checks out, they've done their visit and they check out at the front desk, it'll automatically send them a text message or even an email saying, hey, how did we do today? Would you mind leaving us a review? It's a pretty snazzy process. And there's a lot of softwares that do that. Our service, so it sends everything out, and then, it's based on follow-up, right? So our service will actually, once somebody leaves a review, we'll actually reply to that review on Google or Facebook or wherever it may be for the client. And then if they do happen to get a bad review, which it happens, we always consult with the client first before we kind of formulate our response, so that we're all on the same page and we know. But, the advice there is always take the high road when you can. I always tell them, try to like call them and say, hey, look, I'm sorry about this experience. How can we make it better? And there's a lot of times they'll wind up just, deleting the review on their own. But that's kind of where our service goes is, we have a software system that basically brings it all into one place so that they can see all their reviews. They get notified when a review comes in. And then we actually will respond for them and then, do consulting if there happens to be a bad review.
Yeah, and that's pretty awesome. I think to that point, like having a few bad reviews is okay.
Yeah, it's normal.
It's normal, right? Like if I see a business with all, 2,000 reviews, all stars, I'm kind of weary at that point. I'm like, are they manipulating?
Yeah, really? Yeah, absolutely.
And if there's a bad review, right, it allows me to see, are they responding to them, and how, like to your point, how are they responding? Because if they're pretty much, accusing the patient or client based on that negative feedback, it's just like, well, are you really trying to solve their problem? They're the customer, right? Are you trying to come up with a solution for them? Even if there's not a solution, it's how you treat people, right? And so I always look at bad reviews and good reviews, and I think that's important to see kind of both and how the client responds to them.
Yeah.
As it relates to like overall, like you offer a lot of these marketing strategies that like drive leads to a business or dental practice. You do a lot of great, website UX and conversion funnel optimization. When it comes to overall like tracking the effectiveness of the marketing strategies that you execute, how do you do that?
Yeah, that's one that bugs me. And I've probably spent way too much time and money on trying to figure this one out. But, we talk to clients and we always ask, all right, what are you doing now marketing wise? And how do you know if it's effective or not? Most of them say we're not really sure if it's effective or not. And I don't blame them. It's a bear to track down. But a lot of them say, well, we asked our patient. Okay, well, on the surface, that sounds like, oh, well, okay, well, that's kind of, that'll tell you. But no, that's not accurate, because there's a couple of reasons. First of all, they don't care if you get good info or not. So they'll just say, oh, I just found you online, right? And it could have started with a direct mail piece that they got, and then they went online. You know, that might be the last place where they exited from to actually get the conversion, but that doesn't tell the whole story. So we actually took some time and money, like I said, and we've created this dashboard. It's not automated fully. There's still a lot of man hours that have to go into it. But typically what we do is we listen. We have a small team of people that listen to every call that come in. We look at every form that's filled out. We look at every chat interaction that happens from our campaigns. Okay. And so by that, we can get names, phone numbers, all of that stuff. We use call tracking, so it records every call, of course. And then we have special stuff that we put on the website that shows originally where each lead came from. And so this dashboard shows, all right, this many calls came in, but it was actually only, let's say 500 calls came in, but only 100 of them were, really what we call verified leads. So this is where we listened, and they're in their local market. They have the insurance that, they accept, and they want a service that our client provides. Those are kind of the three main keys. So we can really drill down and say, look, you spent this much money with us. You may have spent this much money on Google ads or whatever it is. It equaled out to this many verified patients. And then we can even get down into this is how many actually scheduled with you. And then if they want to take that over, they can look and see actually how much revenue was brought in from each one of those. We just added the ability to show reoccurring revenue. So let's say that we brought in a patient 6 months ago for them. How many times have they been back since? Right. So it's, there's a lifetime value of every new patient that comes in as well. And so we can track that. And then we show them exactly where everything came from. Did it come from organic Google, paid Google, Yahoo, Yelp, wherever? So it's stuff like that. So what we try to report on are real business metrics. Like, what are they actually getting out of this? Not just like how many times somebody went to your website, or how many times somebody saw your ad. That's all great to know, but it doesn't really tell you the story of, is it working or is it not, right? So that's what we've created, and it's been a work in progress. And but I think at the end of the day, it's worth it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think to really show them the ROI and the overall impact you're making, because I hear this from a lot of agency owners, clients will message them, hey, I don't feel like patients. And that's the last thing you want to hear, right? Is I don't feel like, because if you're recording that data and showing them concrete evidence, like what you're gonna get that. You're gonna get that a lot.
Absolutely.
So, last question for you would be really, if it's a new dental practice or existing, right? How can both of these types of businesses be competitive from an SEO standpoint?
Yeah, that's a great question. I get that one a lot too. A new practice from scratch, brand new, is tougher than an existing practice, and from an SEO standpoint. And the reason that is because the basic explanation is that Google needs to trust you first. It's all about trust with SEO, in my opinion. And so what that means is you're a brand new website, no history to it, nothing. Google sees you and like, I don't know about you. We're going to wait and see what happens here to make sure that you're good enough to come back into our search results, right? Whereas somebody that's had their URL or their practice for 20 years, they've been around, they have some authority behind them. They've already got some credibility with Google, right? So we take two way different approaches. So if a brand new practice from scratch, we're all about trying to build authority as fast as we can, right? And so that can mean like doing press releases, for instance, right? Which, if you do searches on SEO about doing press releases, they tell you not to, and that's a bunch of boohickey, because press releases work great, and it builds a lot of trust with Google because they see that you're in the news, and Google pays attention to those things. And there's things called backlinks that, links from other websites to your website that Google sees. It's a major factor. And all of a sudden they start seeing, very prominent news sources linking back to your website. You don't want to overdo it. It needs to be natural, but that can really help build authority very quickly. Content, for existing and new, put content out on your website about implants, about, whatever it is that you do on a weekly basis, or maybe even more often. Just make sure it's good quality content.
Right.
And you're not just stealing it from somebody or spinning it, or, don't cut corners with this stuff.
Right.
And, sometimes it just turns out to be a numbers game. But we actually have in the past, it kind of depends on the situation, how competitive the market is, but we'll also call in, we'll have a team of people call into, like, say, Boise, Idaho, wherever the dentist is, and we'll try to do local sponsorships with like little league teams, churches, events, things like that.
Yep.
And it's kind of cool because it might only cost a couple $100 a year to be a sponsor of a little league team.
Right.
Get your logo on their website. So, there's hundreds of parents going to that website, checking schedules and stuff. So it's great local community marketing. But what you also get is a backlink from a local in your neighborhood organization back to your website. And that's another thing that Google loves, are local community type links, as well as the big national stuff. So it seems like a lot of work to do that, and it is. But for a brand new practice, that can be really what makes the difference between getting you ranked in 3 months or 6 or 9 months. So it all kind of depends on competition, what we're looking at. But yeah, I mean, it's all about trust, existing or new, and how to build that trust effectively and by the rules of Google.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a hand on that press release stuff, and I love it.
Right. Thanks.
Press releases, think about it. If it's a local like media news website, and you're getting your brand mentioned in the press release section, and there's a lot of users already visiting that website, and you localize it from a marketing standpoint as it relates to where that dentist is located and providing important information on that practice. Google sees that you're being mentioned locally, but also on websites that are already getting a ton of traffic. So to your point, that helps build, relevance, authority, and more visibility. And it's so like, if anyone's listening to this, like what Chris just said about overall trust, that's key, because like we've seen sometimes it's crazy, and I'm sure you've probably seen this before. It could be a website ranking in the local 3-pack, right? The little box where you see the 3 GMB profiles for that search term. This profile that's number 1 may not have any reviews and is ranking number 1 for that keyword. And it's just because their website's been around for 20 years. They haven't done any marketing. Like, they've just been in that community. It's a small community. There's not like 3 dentists there, but they have the authority because they've built that trust, because they've just been around for so long. Now we've been able to overall get more reviews and do more advanced SEO strategies, like things that you're mentioning, to help our clients kind of surpass them. But I've seen it time and time where like some of these websites, they're not doing marketing as much, and they're ranking at the top just because they've been around forever.
Because they've been there. It's frustrating, isn't it?
Very frustrating. Very frustrating. And then I'll say, to your point of backlinks, so what Chris is also talking, just in case anyone hasn't heard that term, it is getting your website mentioned on another website, right?
Yeah.
Like, you've probably seen like blue text on an article. You click on that blue text, it takes you to another website. That's essentially a backlink, and that is probably, would you agree, Chris, like one of the most kind of authoritative measures to rank your website in Google?
Without question, it still is. It has been for a long time. I think the quality of the backlink is more important now than it used to be. It used to be you go out and buy 100 links, from whatever, and you rank pretty well. But now it's got to be pretty quality backlinks, I think. But yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Chris, man, this has been amazing. We appreciate you just coming on this episode, giving your knowledge and expertise, especially in the dental space. If you have any way that someone could reach out to you, like let's say it's a dentist or a marketer that wants to contact you, we'll include that information in the podcast description, but we'd love for you to kind of share, how someone could reach you.
Yeah, probably the easiest way is just my website, kickstartdental.com. There's a free strategy button there. If you're a dentist, feel free to do that. If you're a marketer, feel free to do it. If you're just somebody in another industry looking for help, feel free to do it. I do all of them myself. because that's what I enjoy doing. So I'd be more than happy to give you some free advice on what we do and how we do it. And if you're a dentist, and I'll give you free advice too. And if it makes sense for to hire us to do it for you, then awesome.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. And again, this is Chris with KickStart Dental, 15 plus years of experience. You're a podcaster, coach, you're a great entrepreneur. Again, we appreciate you on this episode, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, Lamar. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.